Let's bring in the member for Fowler now, Independent MP Dai. Dai, always good to see you. First of all, can I ask you about what has been discussed a little bit more openly now? Still anonymous Labor sources in the Australian newspaper saying essentially that they're worried about Western Sydney voters in particular and where the government is being viewed in terms of the Israel-Palestinian conflict. Can you bring any insight there?
Look, I think in my office, we have received many emails from constituents from all backgrounds. So it's not just from people who will identify as following the Muslim faith, but from all backgrounds, saying that, as you know, we need to call for a ceasefire. So that's my community are often don't reach out and join mass campaign emails as other communities do. But in this case, in terms of the Israeli-Palestinian issue, there have been a lot of people asking for ceasefire. And many have reached out, to me saying, because I was the first person that they've heard in my capacity as a federal MP, I think on Q&A last year, calling for a ceasefire. And there is that feeling in the community that the government's not doing enough. However, I have also said to many that we need to also acknowledge the atrocity that Hamas did on October 7th. And I think that where everything has failed is that the negotiation for the release of the hostage has not been done successfully. And I think we need to really think about, as somebody who actually has, escaped a war-torn country, I know the impact of war. And I think that for those who have not been involved or have not suffered the consequences of wars, we can't sit on the fence and demand, one, community to act or one leader to act a certain way. It is a very challenging situation, the situation in the Middle East. And I think that as a community, and I keep on saying this, as a multicultural community, we need to maintain that social cohesion because that is so critical. The people that come to our community here in Fowler have escaped war-torn countries. They have suffered the consequences of tyrannical regimes and they have seen bombings and killings. So we have to be measured in how we actually address this issue. It's critical. Now, I understand there are a lot of anger from both sides, and I actually call for both sides to really consider the human consequences. And I really actually appeal to the greater goodness of humanity in all of us here in Australia. Australia is the best country to actually address this whole human carnage that we're seeing happening, not just in the Middle East, but in many wars. We should be leading the example that peace can be achieved and a multicultural society like ours. And Fowler is a great example of that. People who probably hate each other in other countries, they have actually come to call peace here in Australia. We need to tap into that diversity and to build that social cohesion, to give us that national security that we need. We can't, sorry, Laura, I think that both sides, those who are pro-Palestinian, pro-Israeli, both sides have got extreme languages. And I think we need to find a middle way here because at the end of the day, it's the millions of lives that have been lost in this war and the hundreds of hostages that are still waiting to be released. So we have to be so mindful of that.
So what have you seen in your community? What has happened in Fowler since those October 7 attacks? Deeper division, sharper words?
Can I say to you, I love my community because of the fact that there is no division. I think there has been a very much understanding because many of them are refugees and migrants. So they have been watching, obviously, their fears. Especially, in my community, there is a larger proportion of those who are of the Muslim faith, and there's fear. But I also understand friends and colleagues in places where high population of people of the Jewish faith who are also being impacted. So both faiths have been impacted in all of this discussion, international discussion that we're having and seeing at the moment.
There is a cynical train of thought here that the speech that was given by Penny Wong was in part because or prompted by perhaps voters in Western Sydney of the Muslim faith losing faith in Labor. Have you seen anything that might suggest that to suggest that there might be, you know, a mass exodus of traditional Labor voters looking elsewhere, perhaps to independents like yourself?
Laura, I was actually at the National Security dinner because I was down there for the conference, and I was there the night of the dinner that the senator gave her a speech. And I have to say, she started her speech obviously around national security, but when it came to the part about the Gaza Israeli conflict, she actually condemned. I mean, you know, like condemned Hamas with no uncertain terms, in terms of, you know, that you cannot see what happened on October 7th and ignore it. So for those that feel that, oh, you know, she didn't speak enough, and for those pro-Palestinians, they have to understand that she made a very strong, you know, made a very no uncertain terms that she condemned it. However, she also said that, you know, you can have the right to defend, and I think we've said all this. Israel can have the right to defend, but have to do it in an, you know, according to the rules of war. Now, for me, you know, when you go to war, you kill innocent lives. And there are no rules of law from my perspective, because people would just go there with the guns and shoot and bomb and everything. However, I'm aware as well of a couple of websites coming up saying that you know, Muslim votes. Of course, they'll be doing all of that and saying who voted for supporting, who's more pro-Palestinian, who's less. I mean, I'm on that list. Look, I do what's the best interest of my community and represent my diverse community. I'm not going to be pushed into saying things that I believe will incite more division in our multicultural society. I will stand for cohesion and for peace, especially here in Fowler. And I love my community, and I know my community elected me to represent their voices. And we need to address other issues, such as, from my perspective, the cost of living that's really hurting my community. That's priority for me. And the health of my community, all of those things. But having, you know, a vote for Muslim, identifying all these MPs who are doing, you know, less
so
or more.
are you saying there are websites, quite sophisticated ones, dedicated to telling people of the Muslim faith within that community who is more pro-Palestinian? So this is seems to be quite an organised.
So there's quite a few, but like I said, you know, these people, they.
Do you think that will have an effect once the election rolls around?
Look, you know what, the community, the Muslim community in my electorate of Fowler, are wonderful, law-abiding, you know, community. We have iftar dinners for the last few weeks. I share those iftar dinners with them, and they are also suffering. And they tell me that they're suffering because they don't know the faith of their family members in Palestine, those who've got family members there. But those who feel that they have actually been attacked, you know, because of what Hamas did, suddenly there's this paint, the brush is being painted on them as pro-Hamas. But they do not want, you know, what Hamas is doing. They don't want that either. So it's a complex situation, and that we, as leaders and the media, we need to be mindful of the sensitivity of how currently many people are suffering financially, economically. So when they're not feeling secure financially, when they feel like they've been, you know, disconnected from you know, decision making, any small external factor can drive anger. So they're not, you know, we have to be so careful. The current economic situation in our community, and I'm sure in many other Western Sydney communities across Australia that are suffering in terms of the cost of living, you put anything to them, you incite, you know, fear, the real fear is around survival, putting food on the table, the economic, challenge that we're all facing. But then having something else is to detract the attention away from the real fear of trying to provide for their families, trying to create a safe home for their families, trying to bring their children up in a safe society. So that's what we want as refugees, as migrants who've come to call Australia home. We just want peace, because that's the reason why we came to Australia. We left those war-torn conflict for that reason. We want to make Australia home, and we want to protect Australia from having any of those external factors coming in here. And I think, and I plead to the media to just consider that, because we do not want to bring external factors into this wonderful community that we have created.
Hearing you. Thanks, Dai. Always good to talk to you.
Thanks, Laura.